Take your manure pump.
Um,
That's what I said.
That's what they did over in Morrison. They ran that lake down when it flooded.
I don't wanna have me on.
I don't know why they don't
But
do
live
that
stream
on
is a
all
normal
them
live stream,
sand
it's not
flats.
live stream through WebEx, but the WebEx is available on there?
I mean, Christ, we can run manure pump hose
This is where they.
5 miles to.
I think it was like 10,000. To run 3 pumps, but I think they could pump a lot.
We're not right away. If you wanna sit back and I'll call you up, thanks.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
pumps, yeah, because it takes about,
How do I?
so Jansen takes them about.
There's no second amendment.
I
don't think so.
See where it was all on?
You're supposed to only be 10 or less of this whole entire room, so. Mark, you look like you're on a mission.
I haven't been contacted yet, have you?
You control audio for recording and live stream?
And I'm not doing no more, so.
Or both, it's either on or off.
Okay, so,
I just turned mics on.
Are you missing milking cows?
and then I'm controlling record
You're not.
live, right?
Okay, good for you.
Yes,
If you like this,
not the WebEx.
thing keeps going, you'll have hair on top too.
That's right.
Finding my WebEx.
Wouldn't that be something, huh?
Hey, I want some of whatever you're talking
Oh,
about.
you don't.
Oh, don't I? Yeah, okay. Morning, Miss Amy. Wonderful, thank you.
Who's that behind you?
Shannon,
Where's that? Didn't recognize her. I haven't seen her for about 2 months.
I'm supposed to be connecting.
Amy, I'm gonna try WebEx
here,
tonight,
Mark
okay?
Anderson,
I'm
you
gonna
just-
try WebEx.
Are you guys, what are the rest of your plans?
Just gonna voice it. You know, we'll just listen in.
Is your PDF WebEx in yet?
This is my PDF in WebEx.
Yep.
Great,
Not my.
I'm not sure yet.
okay, I'll be in the room,
oh, you'll be here?
I'll be.
Oh,
I might come again like I did last time.
I'll probably come in.
Oh, yeah, we could come in. That's right. I forgot about that.
Mark, can you hear me?
Oh, then I,
Sorry,
board will
Mark
be-
Anderson on
board's gonna be
WebEx, can you hear me?
The WebEx.
all right, maybe I'll come in. We'll see. We got the information one way or the other.
Mark Anderson, I didn't hear you.
no, I don't have a problem. I
What's
can come
that?
here.
Commissioner Lemire has
Last
to be
month I
here.
was here
You're
with
the chair.
I'll come if you want me to.
Wilson and
Well,
You guys sit,
Steve
Oh.
Can you hold on one second so I can.
Yep.
get this
sit up here.
Set up here. Cause nobody else is.
Yep, I don't know where I'll.
Well, I think I will come in then.
Maybe I'll come in.
I think I probably will come in now too.
I'll be in contact.
You have to be
anyway.
quiet though.
Put this away, I'm not talking, no big deal. Get up and pee, whatever.
I haven't had luck with the WebEx, so I probably,
Hey,
I like the phone,
that I like,
at least I can hear.
you know,
The WebEx is I have
I was using the phone on one, I was driving, then I lost it. And then I lost it again. And I said, it wouldn't be a big deal, but who's on the phone?
Yeah, Amy, Amy.
If I could just
Amy.
click in and start listening again, I'd call multiple times.
Right up to the front. How do I get,
Yeah,
sorry.
right,
Mark Anderson's calling in,
okay.
I don't know how.
and we can't hear him right now.
Okay,
I wanna be able to do that. How do I get from, this is all I got of my
I
WebEx?
gotta see if I can.
Are you signed in?
Yes, I started it.
Should be, where's your?
And since we're not doing anything, I still can't pull up them government things, so heck with it. You know, when I get those messages for
No,
government.
go to participants, so you have everybody who's in, and then what else do you wanna see?
How do I, if I wanna, oh, there you heard Mark.
And then you can mute him, so you don't hear his
Well, I
background.
wanted to make sure, now Mark, can you speak again?
I had that shirt on
See, now it won't even let me go in.
very well, so I took
Then this is my.
I did, but, I know, but see now if it does this here.
We might have to start calling.
Mark, can you hear me? Anderson? Okay, I just heard you. All right, perfect. Thank you.
Do you need to see anything else?
Can you hear other people when we talk directly and clearly into our microphones, right?
Pardon me? Check test, check test.
Are you hearing other people, Mark?
Love the blue, that's the color blue I got.
This time it did. You must, thanks for helping.
No, it is, it's.
Good
it's
morning.
awesome. Thank you.
Morning, that sounded good.
That's blue. And I'm colorblind.
I get to,
I also said in the chat and say, "Would you have attention for a second?"
In a couple of years, we'll have this down pat.
Yeah.
so now I need to connect again and it hides it. That's the problem. So if I share,
So if you go share, and you go
Share
share
content.
content, and you pick what you're gonna share, then he'll see. It looks like you already are.
where do I find it? Like, where do I get the big screen up to do that? Why isn't it? So I can see what I'm sharing.
Sounds like a lion.
It picks up that background noise pretty aggressively, don't it?
I know, I was on a
Oh,
webinar here
Mute, you
about
can mute him.
last week with, I can't remember.
So he's
think
making a
that-
lot of
Somebody
noise.
forgot, didn't mute themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, you could hear a
Person
person.
is too.
I even says, who the hell is not muted?
Might be that person actually.
It was just annoying noises.
Can't get that.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Mine
Yeah.
usually,
Well, yeah, the advantage with
panels?
those webinars is
That's
you
what I'm
crack
thinking.
your ear open, you know.
I can't get the screen up big again.
I'll do WebEx.
Yeah, there you are.
I can still connect it. I'm sharing. I just don't know how to get, do it if I do video, what will it show? Like so I can see what I'm sharing? So I can show, like, have that project?
So do you guys go away for the weekend?
Like so it kind of shows the big meeting and it'll show Mark's.
We had company over. Kids, grandkids.
I
No,
do it
it's
all the
up-
time.
yeah.
Yeah, I can see exactly what's going on. We don't need that.
Right, Randy.
I was telling Jeff, this is the first time I had to wear a mask because I get my blood tested every 6 weeks. First time I ever put one on is when I had to go in the hospital. Come on, I came out coughing. 'Cause I didn't, I couldn't
I
breathe.
want to see my screen.
Your glasses fall down?
Usually,
They did.
Yeah, they do.
did.
I gotta pull mine down just about
Assign
to
you.
here, so that,
Then I sneezed accidentally.
What?
So, so.
Just hit off, but let me.
Snowbank.
Good?
Yes, it takes 3.
No one knew I was on.
Gentlemen, meeting will come to order. Please stand and join us in saying of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning, Mr. Chair.
Morning, everybody.
Morning, Mr. Chair.
morning, everybody out there.
Approval of the board minutes.
I'll make a motion for that.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Wilson, second by Commissioner Jelinski to approve the minutes. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Additions or deletions to the agenda? Gentlemen, could I get a motion and a second for the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Jelinski, second by Commissioner Wincher to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. First item on the agenda, Lake Chaminade. Gentlemen? If I could have you state your name for the record.
I am Bob Engel.
Morning, Bob.
Mr. Chair, I'd also like them to state their address, where they're from too, if that's okay.
Yeah, 34294 Aztec Road. I'm now a resident of Lake Chaminade. Thanks, you guys. I appreciate you having us to this meeting. The group, first of all, I guess is the group. I'll introduce some of the group. This is Dale Williams.
Morning, Dale.
Morning. Ray Gruber,
Right?
Tom Schuler,
Morning, Tom.
Dave Granning, Mark
Dave.
Chris, and Chuck Ross. And
Mark
yeah,
and Chuck.
that's our group that's here today. There's other folks that are missing. I'll turn it over to Dale and let him describe why us and what's this all about. What's a Lake Chaminade Emergency Task Force?
All right, I'm gonna have you just speak directly into the microphone.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm Dale Williams. I'm a seasonal resident at Lake Chaminade, 2498 Lakeshore Drive.
Morning, Dale.
Good morning. The Lake Chaminade Emergency Task Force was formed last fall. We are all members of that task force. And our group got together before freeze up, and our purpose in meeting was to say, what can we do to affect or influence the water levels on the lake? We are not the Lake Improvement District, although we have representation from the Lake Improvement District on our task force. And I think one of the good things about our committee is that we have on our task force all groups that have worked in some way or other to affect the water levels. There were some small projects attempted that were done that were successful in their own way and proved some points, but all of these different groups are represented on our emergency task force. And I think our mission is to focus on what can be done, okay? And we have a lot of varying personalities and groups, so a lot of times some of the motives might be what should be done, right? So some people are very motivated to get things done, but we are focused on what can we do in more the short term. So that's really all I wanted to say.
Okay.
And I'm gonna let Bob
All right.
carry on.
Okay, good. Thanks, Dale. Travis, could I get that first slide? The first slide here is kind of describes a plan for our watershed. Now this one is, okay, this is not the one. I think I've got it. Yeah, go back. You can just scroll through them. I'll take a look here. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, guys.
No, that's all right.
Okay, that's one, that one, but there's a description, there's a document. The document that goes with it. Okay, there you go. If you could scroll to the top, take a look at this. This is something that as a group, the first thing we wanted to do was we wanted to identify our watershed. So with Mark Frisk's help, and Mark is this guy here. Mark grew up in the area, so he knows the area really well. Fished, hunted, his family had a farm, so he was familiar with what we refer to as beaver engineering, how to move water when it's creating problems. And so we created this document basically describing, so it would easily help us understand this and pass along to others how our watershed should be looked at and how we see it. And so then we've prioritized, basically we have three parts to our watershed. We have southwest, and it describes the southwest corner of the lake. And then we have, and basically the description is fairly accurate, and we have made some impacts to that area already. We were able to put a siphon in Cass County Lake. Cass County Lake holds a lot of water to the southwest of the lake, and it also allows the water to escape that way. Currently, there's water bound up west of the lake and southwest of the lake, but we know that water flows through Lena, from the swamps west of the lake and flows under 202 Aztec Road to Lena, and then out Lena out the west side, under Highway 10 and west through Cass County Lake. Beaver dams were causing a little bit of a backup there, so we were able to put in we researched and talked to Todd County about that because it's right on the border. We were able to put in a 14-inch siphon and get that functioning back in December. And it ran for a full month before it froze up. Now we know water is still moving through that area. South, the next area was south. And we continue to focus on, by the way, southwest, and we're continuing to come up with ideas for that. But the next one was south, and this was a big one. There was the ditch project that we did from 30th all the way to the county line west. That water moves to Fish Trap Creek. That was a huge project, and Steve Bukowski helped us with that. So did Shannon Wetstein, and everyone was very helpful. The township adopted that project, and we had funds from the Lake Association donated to the township, but the township pretty much carried that cost of that entire project. So we were able to clean out 2.5 miles of ditch and move water to the west. We got about a mile from our inflow. Now we move to what we call southeast, which is where our inflow is coming in. So that encompasses the area southeast from 40th to 60th and south to Lake Alexander. If you want to bring up the map now, I can, not that, the other, there you go. And if you can zoom in a little bit on that and then scroll down a little bit, just a little bit down. There we go. And then you can see, I've got a little laser pointer here. I think it works. It might
Not
work.
on that television, believe it or
Oh,
not. That's
doggone it. Okay.
super
Well, anyways,
bummer.
the red line designates what we refer to as ditch east. The yellow line, this is the south area, and this is the southeast area is to the lower and to the right. Everything's in red. The yellow line designates our cleaned out ditch at 30th. So from that area to the west has all been cleaned out. The red line is what we're here to discuss a little bit more detail. But I also wanted to show you some of the other areas that are impacting us. So if you could slide that, pull that to your left, that image, the other way, I'm sorry. There we go. So these areas here are impactions that are causing the water to come to Chaminade. The first one with the arrow on your left is what we're calling the reroute of County Road 3, and it goes through the Beinhorn property down to Lake Alexander. That used to drain all of that, well, we'll say 2/3 of the water in that area. Now that's blocked up. There is some flooding. Steve Bukowski was kind enough to come out and visit this area with us, and we were able to show him, and so was Mike Lemire, and so was Shannon Wetstein. We took them on a nice tour. It was great that they came out and did this. And we've had other conversations with Steve about how we can correct some of the ditching in that area to improve the drainage to the south. The other one is in the middle there. You'll see that arrows in that ditch. We're calling that one the Altrector ditch. This area, now that square mile there holds a lot of water. North of the Altrector farm is the Gerke farm, and you'll see a little pond up there. We call that the birdwing pond. It has kind of a birdwing shape, and we've walked that property with Gerke's permission and seen lots of water on his property that he'd like, to obviously mitigate causing flooding throughout his property. So we have. Shannon has visited. They've given us a permit to clean out the Altrector ditch, and so we're hoping to move some of that water to the south as it used to go. Historically, that water moved south and down and met up with the water from Bernhardt Lake, which is to your right there, and there's a ditch there, and then that flows down into Lake Alexander. So this water had a way to escape that square mile, but being bound up, it has to flow to the northwest towards Chaminade. And if you look over towards the next square mile, that's across from 60th to 70th. There's another impaction there that's got the little blue marker on it. And then to the other side there was also some impaction there that's causing that water not to be able to go to the southeast as it used to do. So that just kind of gives you, and then if you zoom out on that, Tabitha. Okay,
Like
there you
that.
go. There you go. You can, this study is a Google Earth presentation, and I could take you all around it, and we could spend a lot of time on this, but right now we wanted to kind of focus on this area that we're referring to as turn off the faucet. Because you can see on the left side of the screen up there, there's some more blue dots and some down through. That's where our water goes to the southwest, but we're here to focus on this area that's right in the middle. So if you could zoom back in on that, actually go to the next slide, I guess. Yeah. So that description, the next backup one, and then this is a description of, or forward, I should say. Okay, so this map, this is good. So this is the area of focus right now that we're here for, because we've Shannon Wetstein and Steve Bukowski both toured this with us, and Shannon suggested that it is possible for us to create an impoundment. And if you zoom in right to the middle of that area, a little bit to the right, you see the blue outlines. Okay, if you zoom in, now if you look at this, to the north, you'll see our inflow, which takes in water from what we call Culvert 1 and Culvert 2. Culvert 1 is the one that's just north or up from this blue outlined area. And that blue outlined area is an area that currently holds water. It's standing water that is already a natural impoundment. The red line, if you kind of follow the red line to that area over to the right, that's Culvert 2. And you can see to the north of 203, you can see the wetland, basically where this waterway takes it, and it takes it into Lake Chaminade right by that berm on your upper left of the picture. So you'll see a field to the right, a field to the left, and then there's a berm across there. That entire area, that water flows through here, and it crosses that berm and then flows into Chaminade. During the spring, we were in there, and the water flowing was incredible, the amount of water that's coming in. Every spring, we get about a foot of bounce from runoff. Now, the idea was that we would create a collection area in this impoundment area with the blue frame there. And then we would put a pump in there, since our first choice was to follow the yellow line and to create some ditching through here over to 30th. This would connect the inflow to our current ditch that's been cleaned out. But WACA, or Wetland Conservation Act, rules prevent us from draining wetlands. You can see the elevations here. They're really fairly some minor areas we'd have to adjust, and then we'd have to berm up in that blue line area to kind of force that water to go to our ditch. But since that was not something we could do at this time, Shannon suggested to make a collection area and pump the water, which is the blue line, pump the water to the west and then down 30th. So this creates, it gives us an opportunity. She said we can give you a temporary permit. We had a TEP meeting last Monday morning, and we discussed this. And at that meeting, we discussed some options and some things that we would look at. And at that time, Steve Bukowski suggested that some of the ditching might have to be done. And he suggested that possibly we could put the berm higher on that. This is an AMA, or aquatic management area, where the water from those two culverts collects into a wetland. So that's state land, and to do any work on there, we would have to come up with $1.5 million bond to create the berm, and that was something a little bit out of reach for us. And the DNR also suggested that we move our collection area back to our original thought that Shannon suggested, which was south of 203 in that area. So the plan is that we would create a sump area, a rock structure, no bigger than 400 square feet there. We would put in a submersible electric pump, and then we would pump it down the blue line in 6, 8, 10-inch pipe. And the next document you'll see is a quote we got from MVI. The next one, let's see, it's on their letterhead. This one is one I got from, yeah, that one there, the back, there you go. And so this was a quote, we had Robert Kempenich from MVI come out, take a look at the site, give us a look at the water volume, and look at what was there. And so this was his quote. Quote basically comes up to $36,800, and that would include the installation and 1 month's rent of the equipment. Does not include any power to run this equipment. And then so being that we would have a temporary permit, this would allow us to have this for 6 months running until freeze up, and then we could get an extension next year and do this again. Our goal naturally would be to start this earlier. When we have that runoff, we can actually manage it. I've had conversations with Steve Bukowski about how we would direct the water from Culvert 2 to Culvert 1 and how this would be done. But at this particular time, I just wanted to present this to the board and to also give you guys an opportunity to meet us, see what we're doing. I'm sure that Mike has shared some of these maps with you guys and discussed some of this. He was, like I said, kind enough to come out and spend time with us. We'd love to have you guys out for a nice boat tour. If you want to come out and have a barbecue and some beers and a boat tour, come on out. We'll show you what we have going on there. But we'd love to have it. Basically, though, our problem is that we are a bunch of volunteers. We don't have a budget. We rely on donations from the Lake Association, and as I think I said, the township has said they can pony up another $20,000 to the Ditch East or the Turn Off the Faucet campaign. The Lid could possibly donate 4, and I think the Lake Association 15, so we could come up with about $39,000 for this. By looking at this bid, if we were to run it for 6 months, it'd be looking somewhere in the neighborhood of about $75,000, not including electricity. Electricity, I think, is gonna run us in the $20,000 to $30,000 if we run it all summer. These are our findings at this point. We haven't taken it much further than this. Obviously, we have work to do yet, so I guess I'll end with my part of this presentation and just, open it up to any discussion and questions. Anybody else want to add anything from my team? Come on forward and help out. We've got some really, some great guys here. My expertise lies in printing, so I'm not really into electricity and pumping. But some of these guys are very knowledgeable about electricity and about pumping and have had experience with both things in that trade. So,
Mark or Chuck, want to step up and say anything?
I will.
Mark's never short for words, so. But he's been I'll say this about Mark. He brought so much knowledge to our program, or our thing here, our study group, our task force, that he's somebody that's invaluable. And I give Mark a lot of the credit for what we've learned about our watershed. And so he's been a great guy to have on here. And
Short, you're not gonna give me any time.
okay, it's yours.
I'm Mark Frisk. I reside at 36619 Aztec Road, Motley. I do not live on Lake Chaminade. I do have a lot on Lake Chaminade.
Could you speak into the microphones, please?
Certainly.
I'm sitting in the back row listening to Bob put our presentation on, biting my lip as I do quite frequently throughout the last 3 years of this frustration of high water on Lake Chaminade. I've watched this lake go up and down normally by itself. The watershed worked just fine years ago. As we all know, our population has probably doubled in the last 30 years. The action on the wetlands, the changes in the environment, anything from a beaver dam to a snowmobile trail to a four-wheeler trail to a new cabin to a new driveway to altercation of a county road. We need to restore the wetlands. I'm not in favor of any type of pump. I never have been. I've let the group know that from day one. Mechanically, we can move a lot of water for any dollar amount we so choose. However, we need to restore the wetland to what it was and make the system work Mother Nature way. It can be done if they would let us. Every agency involved, including the DNR, including Soil and Water, including Army Corps of Engineer, have all come up with ideas what we can't do. I think it's time for each agencies to get together and say what we can do and get this resolved. It's gone on long, far too long. There is issues to restore this that could be overcome, whether it be at the county level or the state level, and it needs to be corrected. If we don't do something soon, as I said to the groups, plural, it's Memorial Weekend. We have 3 months before we're looking at frost again. I understand that this went from a Lake Chaminade problem years ago. We got a little high water, we got to do some sandbagging. It turned into a Scandia Valley Township problem. Oh, we got roads underwater, we've got residents impacted, we now have sewer systems impacted. I've also heard that there's $8 million in revenue that's taken off the tax rolls for Morrison County, Minnesota. Now it's a county problem. Unless later on in the meeting we're going to reduce the budget, everybody in this county pays now for Lake Chaminade. So my question is, what are we as a county going to do about it? It's time to step up to the plate, take over, help us out. We've had a list, we've had ideas. We're not just here to complain, we do have options. We're a group of complainers that have action results. I'm sure you've gotten a lot of complainers that just complain, but the groups that we work with have come up with ideas to restore things, to get the water moving, get the water away from the watershed and make things happen. Every time we try to do something, we run into a firewall that says, oh, you can't do that. And I understand there's laws on the books. But at some point, if we do nothing, you're gonna take another $8 million off the books next year. So my plea to the county and this board is we need more help. We need some funding, we need some state people maybe to step in. We've made several calls to the governor and got nowhere. On a side note, I get a kick out of watching western Minnesota flood out at times, and the National Guard and the Army Corps is there and the governor's there, and they're getting help, they're getting pumps, they're getting sandbags, they're getting funding, they're getting all kinds of help. What's the difference between their floods and Lake Chaminade flood? We have probably more impact right now than some of those Minnesota River Valley floods. So that's my plea, is we need to step up to the plate at this time. We're running out of options. I have nothing else to say unless you have some questions. I'd certainly entertain those.
Gentlemen? Commissioner Winter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question I have, maybe this is for Deb or somebody. That bonding money that we approved for the Chaminade, that it was like a year or two, it wasn't bonding, but it was like a $300 and some thousand that they were given.
That's the Lake Improvement District to pursue the plan that they presented. So I
guess then I'll let you speak. My question is where's that money, can that be used for this? So go ahead, Deb, thank you.
the budget that they approved, that you approved as a next step once the membership approved it, included a very specific set of goals, parameters, project funding. So that's pursuing that avenue or that project, which isn't what we're talking about right now. And I was kind of curious too, you had mentioned the lid was going to provide money. I don't know what line item they have that
Yeah.
authority to do that, so I just need to make sure that that's on somebody's radar too.
Right, we had asked them if they had any extra funds, because obviously they're now the taxing authority, I guess I could say, for our lake. It's actually, from what we're starting to believe, it's hurting us because their strict rules as to what can be done with those funds. They presented a budget. We were all approved of it. We were all for it. And now it's tying our hands because there's so much resistance to the plan, that they're running into resistance with flowage easements and other things that are out of our control. We're basically at a loss there. And I think by law, that money's kind of tied up with the lid. Now, I don't know if, since their project is getting to the point where it's coming to a stop because of the amount of issues they have with flowage easements and things like that, what can be done to redirect those funds to actually get something done. And I think I asked Shannon Wetstein, I said, is this actually hurting us that we have a lid? Is it hurting our cause? Here we are now asking the county to participate, to be participant with us, and because the lid can't get anything done, and it's for numerous reasons. But and we supported the lid. I as Mark said, I don't think any of us want to do mechanical pumping. We don't want to pay for that, but we don't have a choice. We're 3 feet over our high water mark. People are underwater. There's no way to get that water out of that lake. We can do some of these things, shut off the faucet first, but anyhow, I don't want to. So I guess that answers your question.
Yeah, and again, I feel for you guys on Lake Shaman. I mean, I really do. You know, like, as far as asking the money, happen to us, our hands are tied here too, because again, we have to deal with WACA, we have to deal with DNR. We've had the emergency management come here for if we could get declared emergency, and that was explained, no, we can't, because it's an ongoing thing. And I mean, there's a lot of hoops that, yeah, everybody has to jump through. And in this case, I don't know what else we can do as far as, you can't throw money at anything if you can't do it. You know what I'm saying? So if there's,
I believe you guys have gotten permissions to do what you're asking for today, correct?
Yeah, you can ask Shannon Wetstein. Yeah. Shannon, do you want to speak to that?
She has the lapelling.
So, Mr. Chair, Shannon Wetstein from the Morrison Soil and Water, and we administer the Wetland Conservation Act. Right now, I have an application in my office for this project, which we will have to act on within 60 days. So our TEP meeting was basically the follow-up to the application to ask more questions and get more clarity on the project. So at this point, it has not been approved yet, but I don't see it not being approved if we get additional information from the group that will answer the questions that were raised by the TEP, because there is a short-term pumping allowance within WACA that's allowed in the rule. That is a 6-month with the option of being extended to up to 18 months at the discretion of the LGU, which is the Morrison Soil and Water.
Did that answer your question, Commissioner Winter?
Yes, it did.
Commissioner Blaine?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Engel and Mr. Frisk and the rest of the gentlemen here, I know myself, I'm sure the rest of the board members recognize your faces and your names from how many times we've gotten together before to talk about this. And when you started your presentation, Bob, I was impressed that you had these people here and you painted this picture that you're all representative of other organizations or of the organizations that have existed up there, and you're all kind of come together to pull on the same rope here and try and get something done, and which is, I guess, almost, I'll go out on a limb and say almost a breath of fresh air from what we've dealt with, because there's always it seems that every idea, plan, thought on the issue of high water on Lake Chaminade has brought opposition from somebody because they don't like that idea, or they don't like this, or they don't like the cost of it, or they don't like where the water's running, or whatever. So starting out and looking through this, and I thought that this, and I still think this is a very positive step forward. So where I'm going with this, my question is Mr. Frisk, when you came to the podium here and you said you were biting your tongue on some of the things, and then this becomes kind of revealed as far as you're not a big fan of pumping, of this pumping project that we're talking about here, and now I kind of understand that, but I'm going to ask you to maybe expound to us here a little bit where you want to go with this, and being a person who is very familiar with that area, you've lived there, and understand the geography up there. And you mentioned restoring the wetlands, and that would be I'm kind of drawing that in your mind that will be how this water issue could be mitigated in the long term through Mother Nature and through restoration of proper wetlands up there. Maybe you can share with us a little bit more on that, but also my question would be, are you against this pumping as far as maybe a short term? Is this looked at as being kind of a short term Band-Aid or a short term angle on this, and your thought process is more of a long term solution? Can you help me here?
I sure can.
Thank you.
Thank you. Am I in favor of pumping, temporary pumping? By all means. We're grasping straws at this point. And when Shannon was graciously allowed us at a TEP meeting and to apply for a permit, it was her idea, standing boots on the ground at the site of the impoundment, and suggested that, hey, there's a possibility here, I'll check it out when I get back. And it proved to be so far successful. So we'll take whatever we can get. If it moves 1 gallon of water, we'll take whatever we can get. And I don't like the word temporary for anything, because this is a long-term solution that we need. Yeah. And so yes, I'm in favor of this project, highly in favor of this project, because it's moving forward. It gains volumes and mileage for the residents of Chaminade, the residents of Scandia Valley. Keep in mind, I said earlier, this isn't just a lake problem anymore. Scandia Valley, as you know, we dug out the ditch south of 203 last year throughout the winter months, and we had to take permits for that, and the people were jumping for joy when we knocked on the door and said, hey, would you be interested in moving some water off your property? We thought the task would be hard. It was the easiest thing we ever did. So it isn't just Lake Chaminade anymore. It's the entire township. We hear it over and over again through the agencies, oh, the whole state is high water. Do you know that today, if you go on Fish Trap Creek, if you go on Lake Fish Trap, if you go on Lake Alec, they're pretty much normal. I grew up on the Long Prairie River. It's real normal right now. Our watershed is the watershed of the Long Prairie District. All of our water runs west from Chaminade, from Fish Trap, from Lake Alley, via the Fish Trap Creek, onward to the Long Prairie River. Enters the river at Philbrook, Minnesota, and then traverses back to the east again towards Motley. You mentioned knowledge of the area. I probably stepped foot on every square mile. I know I have. I've walked every spot on there. I knew all the landowners over the years. Obviously, that's changed, as we know. Hence, some of the problem is a 200-acre farm, a 100-acre farm gets downsized into 10-acre parcels. More impaction, more human intervention, things change. But this can still be fixed. Everybody says, oh, there's no outlet on Lake Chaminade, or Lake Chaminade's in a bowl. Well, I agree with that, but years ago, the watershed ran to the southwest, through the aquifer, towards Lena, towards Cass County Lake, onward to Fish Trap Creek. It has ran there forever. It maintained itself just fine. We found a beaver dam 125 yards long, 5.5 feet high, on the south side of Cass County Lake. We had no clue it was there. Guess what? Don't touch that beaver dam. It's been there longer than 10 years. If I would have thought of it, I would have, well, I won't say that. I have a shirt that's made that's quite special to me. But anyway, we need to open up the waterway, and we need to stop the inflow. The inflow has changed in 6 square miles from Highway 10. Actually, the first mile is into Todd County. So Highway 10 and east for 5 more miles is our watershed. It all happens between County Road 3 and 203. Steve's in the back. Steve, I've said this to Steve, we've had consults on this various times, that when, in '06, when Highway 3 got realigned, some things got changed. It was '08 and beyond is when the elevations of the lake started to increase by the data sheets, and I can show you where the water used to go that doesn't run there anymore. Streams, tributaries, ditches, impactions, numerous impactions. The lay of the land, as Commissioner Blaine mentioned, was such, if you haven't been boots on the ground, very little elevation difference. So if you stop the water up on one end that used to run towards Lake Alexander, it only has to be changed by 1.5 to 2.5 feet, and it runs towards Lake Chaminade. So we get literally 5 square miles of runoff towards the lake. 2/3 of that used to run away from the lake years ago. So there lies the problem. This is a man-made problem over 30 years. So if we can restore some of this water and get it away from the watershed to the south, and keep in mind that Lake Alex water runs into Fish Trap Creek also. Runs through a thoroughfare into Fish Trap Lake, onto Fish Trap Creek, onto the Long Prairie River. So whether we dig the ditch out and cleaned it out, which we did, all that water still goes to Fish Trap Creek. That's our outlet. And I had suggested with the DNR, Tim Crocker, Mark Anderson, a couple weeks back, hey, you know what? Let's connect these 2 lakes. Let's connect Chaminade and Crookneck, and let's make an outlet. We could dig a ditch between the 2 of them, run water through there. It would flow over to the lake. It would solve our problem. That easy. That's how simple this is. Can we do it? Never say never. So things like that you have to get creative with, and the possibility of making this happen. If we could make water move throughout the next 3 months, we could lower the lake a couple feet just by digging, or maybe a conduit between the 2 lakes. But we need Lena, and we need Cass County Lake. And they say, oh, you can't put invasive species into that. Well, guess what? They're gonna get it eventually. I realize that. But I suggested, okay, let's put a conduit into Lena, and let's put a conduit, or you don't need a conduit to Cass County Lake to make it flow, because the elevations are correct. And we could restore the ditch when we're done lowering the lake, and treat the ponds. I call them ponds, Lena and Cass County Lake, but they are on our one of 10,000 Minnesota lakes. So there's ways to do this if they would let us. You know, over the years, the rules and the laws change, and it makes it hard to get anything done. And we had a list of many, many items when we started, and our list is getting really, really short on ideas now. But there is a way, if we could use a conduit through Lena to Cass County Lake to lower the lake, and there's ways to divert that water back to the south of the 2/3 of our wetland that runs into the lake now. This has been going on for a long time to get to this point. And then with a couple of wet years, it really crept up on the residents of the lake.
Commissioner Blaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Mark, I mean, you seem very confident about what you're sharing with us and how this could be fixed, and your knowledge of the geography there. And I'll be honest, I've not walked with boots on the ground in those square miles around there or through your watershed. So my question is, in your discussions with the DNR and with some of the agencies that have, I'll say, the first right to say yay or nay to your thinking, your plan, or are these types of options on Lake Chaminade and that watershed, what has been the response from them? In other words, from the DNR, from Soil and Water, from the Army Corps, from others, you know, do they share the same understanding with you, or are we getting you know, a brick wall there? We're a little farther down on the food chain here in the decision-making process, and I don't mean to be blunt, but I mean, you know, DNR will have first crack at a lot of things that get done when we start talking about water, and Shannon's here and understands her responsibility in leading Soil and Water here too. But I'm kind of on the, you know, I'm kind of taking the same perspective with this that you are, and that we'll start looking for things that we can do and push to do the things that we feel strongly can have a positive result there. Share with us what the response has been from some of the agencies over our head.
The first thing that comes to mind is we will take whatever we can get. As I said, 1 gallon. If the city folks would take a gallon of water back with it, dump it on their yard, it helps every time they come up on the weekend. So we graciously accepted the invitation to have the ditch dug out. That was a major undertaking. Steve Bukowski's been very helpful with alignment of some new projects. As I mentioned earlier, Shannon, with this permitting process to do an impoundment. The DNR, I told the group, I says, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, let's purposely move away from the AMA land so we don't have to screw with the DNR. Let's go back to the south side of 203 because that's private land. That's one less agency we have to deal with, because every single time you make a suggestion, there's 5 steps backwards when you present it, and you get nowhere. The complexity of this is relatively simple. It's called common sense. And we all realize that obviously that went out the window a long time ago when they created all these wetland acts and all these crazy ideas to restore and keep the wetlands. I love the wetlands. I do tree farm work, forest management. I belong to small woodlot owners. I actually went to Brainerd CLC for natural resources. So I have a high interest in the impact of the land, in what takes place and what goes on here without destroying the wetlands. But on the other hand, people are flooded out, and nobody seems to give a damn. That's my take on this. And we're getting very tired. We don't get paid a whole lot for doing what we've been doing for the last 3 years. And I've said that too about the lid. I said, who's gonna be on the lid in 10 years? I was a volunteer fireman for 27 years out of Motley, I watch trying to get recruits, whether it be a church board, whether it be a fire department, whether it be a lid board. Good luck getting volunteers in about 5 more years, because the younger generation does not know what that is to give back to your community. So that being said, this is a common sense. Could this be done? Would this work? It could be done. We may have to, and I've said this many times, so it's nothing new, when Shannon hears it or Steve hear it, or Mark Anderson, who's probably on the line listening to this, no offense, Mark, but sometimes you have to look the other way to help the common good. There's too many rules and restrictions going on here for something that could be as simple as, let's lay a conduit between Lake Chaminade and Lena Lake. The elevations would merit, we could take 2 feet off the lake by next fall. And if we don't have 2 feet off the lake by next fall, I think by then FEMA will be involved, or somebody else, because as I said, the other $8 million is coming just 12 months from today.
So, if I may, Mr. Chair?
Mark, did you want to say anything?
Thank you.
Mark Anderson?
Mark, we can't hear you yet. I'm going to call you on my phone and put you on speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Deb. That's where I was going. I wanted to see what the response would be here.
I'm gonna mute you, Mark. This is.
You're probably gonna get that feedback because you've got your phone and your WebEx going at the same time. Can you hear me now?
Why don't I take the WebEx off and just call Mark? Mark, should I do that? I think it's important to hear from you.
Well, we get connected here. I do have one question. It's a,
Oh, Mark, hold on, that's not gonna work.
you were saying
can I
it's
try?
a 6-month permit with the possibility of an extension to 18 months? What happens after that time frame? Is it, can we re-up and get it again, or is it a one-time deal?
Shannon, I'd have to direct that question to you.
I'm sorry, Shannon. The permit to pump from that culvert area, it's a 6-month with the possibility of extending it to 18 months. What happens after that? Can they re-up and reapply for a permit again, or is it a one-time deal?
This allowance under no loss of wetlands would be a one-time occurrence.
Okay. What if they gave the ability to do this under the lid name? Would they be able to do it? No?
No, it doesn't work really like the water appropriations permitting through the DNR. It basically is just looking at the entire area and having the understanding that the pumping that would occur would, temporarily have some sort of effect on the surrounding area, but that it would be allowed to come back to what it would be naturally without the pumping project. So it would have to end and would not be able to be renewed again. I think maybe after 10 years or something, I don't remember exactly what it says, but it wouldn't be, you could apply next season again. It would be, you're waiting years again before a similar project could take place at that location.
Bob?
Yeah, I've got a question. Shannon, if we did this for 6 months this year, and then we got an extension to do 6 months next year, would we still have 6 months remaining, since it's an 18-month is shown as temporary? Would we be able to have another extension after that, so then we'd be able to literally do this for 18 months Is that the way I understand it?
Yeah, we could, and that is my hope with this project, is we could identify, pumping periods and be really strict with that window, and then resume again during the next open window, and then resume again.
3 years then. So get 3 years out of
So
the
you get
project.
3 years.
sort of.
Possibly, but it would definitely depend on how the project went in the first season,
Sure.
and our findings and evaluation of what sort of impact that it had, and if the pumping could be continued at the same rate, or if it would have to be adjusted moving forward.
What constitutes emergency pumping? Was this considered emergency pumping, or could it be considered emergency pumping?
And again, we're using the same terminology as what DNR water appropriations permitting uses, but really in WACA, it has some different terminology. But essentially, it's in the law to allow for like dewatering projects of infrastructure. So if the county was interested in putting in a road project, they would be allowed to temporarily drain down the area to be able to work. So that's what this allowance would fall under, is that category.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
Mark, can you hear?
I can hear, yes.
Okay. Your comments.
I missed most of Shannon's, as we were going through. I did hear something about a temporary appropriations permit. Do I need to touch base on that at all?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. In regards to the plan of diversion from water from the two culverts on 203, in conversation within DNR, there are a number of liability issues, and that's not, specific to the state, but it's also specific to, every unit of government and every private property owner, that if activities are being conducted on owned property, that, there's just liability issues that we couldn't overcome as far as doing work on the AMA for diversion. So they did speak a bit about damming up and diverting water and directing it to the newly cleaned out ditch. That's outside of DNR jurisdiction, and we discussed that at the TAP. I was up there this morning and looked at both culverts. The west culvert was flowing, this is an estimate, was flowing at or around a half a CFS, which comes to roughly about 600 million gallons in a day. The easternmost culvert was stagnant at the time I was up there, and it was kind of drizzling at that time. I know the eastern culvert, which would convey the most water given the square mileage. Currently, that particular water course has a little bit over 13 square miles of drainage. But that particular waterway is not behaving like it's receiving the entire amount of that 13 square miles. If it were, the stream would be, the bank flow would be, 11 to 12 feet, where currently now it's at about, I would estimate 5 or so. And the flow, like I said today, was minimal to none. And I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, Eric Altena and I, Eric, fisheries manager, went up to the culvert sites after a 4-inch rain. This was August, like I said, 2 or 3 years ago, and at that time, we measured flow of just a little bit of over 1 CFS. So, ultimately these two inlets, are not behaving the way we would expect them to. They're much more minimal in their input than we would expect to see. As far as the DNR and the permitting situation, reevaluating the southwest route, There's still the kind of the same concerns that we had, 4 or 5 years ago regarding a southwest outlet. We're talking about multi-jurisdictions, judicial ditches, there's a potential for that. And AIS issues and flowage easements. So, to think that the Lena Lake solution is a simple one would not be an accurate statement. It's much more complicated than laying a pipe and letting her buck. So I guess I kind of rambled on here, kind of being out of the conversation. But if there's any other questions, Mr. Chair, members of the board that you'd like to ask, I'm available for that.
Thank you, Mark. Commissioner Blaine would like to ask you a question.
Mr. Chair, I have two. First of all, Mark, I want you to clarify to us here, when you said your viewing of these two inlet pipes and the amount of flow you said was minimal, are you talking about flow into the lake or into that watershed, or are we interpreting this incorrectly?
It would be flow going through the culverts directed towards the lake. When I say 600 million gallons a day is minimal, ultimately culvert on the east side, the furthest to the east, or culvert number 2, I believe it is, if it were receiving the drainage from the entire 13 square mile watershed, that should be flowing at approximately 1,600 CFS, or not 1,600, 16 CFS, somewhere in there, 16 to 20 cubic feet per second to water. And currently it's conveying, like I said, little to none.
But so if I may, so we have one culvert that you say is moving 600 million gallons an hour towards the lake.
A day, sir.
Or a day, pardon me. Well, we'll just, in this example, I'm not sure if a day versus an hour even means anything, but so if we already got a lake that's already 2+ feet over high water mark, and we have an inlet that's allowing 600 million gallons in a day, why are we doing something about this? I'm trying to figure out how, we're recognizing this, but then this should be accepted as being right then.
Right, and Mr. Chair, members of the board, DNR doesn't hold any particular position on the project. Once the project was moved to going back to creating an impoundment on the south side of 203 and pumping from that particular location, I know Eric has no issues with blocking off culverts going in, and to eliminate 600 million gallons, yeah, that's definitely a volume.
Well, and so Mark, that's this is what we're, I'm trying to get my arms around the fundamentals here a little bit. And so if we already, if the glass is already full, why would we keep dumping water into it? And so I'm trying, so then I'm kind of jumping on you here a little bit, in the sense that, should we not be looking at how we can mitigate that 600 million gallons that are coming in there every day? And do we go to you because now, I'm sorry, I'm just being a little bit fundamental here, but if we identify that this is happening, and this is, and we can then assume that this would have a negative effect on reducing the level of water in the lake, where do we go to make an adjustment to that 600 million gallons coming in through that pipe? Is that, do we go to you in DNR, or do we look at someone else? Can you help me out?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Blaine, this particular project, and Shannon can chime in if I'm wrong, is currently in the permitting process through the Soil and Water Conservation District. And that's the process this would go, other than providing comment during the TEP meeting and providing, any type of input on project development. DNR is, just acceptable of whatever the solution is to divert that water on a temporary basis under the WACA laws.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, especially for the levity on this, but this would be on a temporary basis.
Correct.
The problem,
So we can't look at somehow stopping that inflow of 600 million gallons a day on a permanent basis.
the problem is we have to stop it and then divert it, and it's the diversion process that's causing a problem, and that's what state statute says you can't drain a wetland. And the only way to get from this ponding area to the ditch that these gentlemen got cleaned out is to go through a wetland. That would be probably the best way to do it because there's no mechanical. But today they're here to tell us that we're gonna drain that bowl with a pump to that ditch that these gentlemen just had cleaned. So I don't think the DNR has anything to say about the pumping situation that they're here before us today, but I believe the state statute prevents them from going across that wetland, draining that wetland.
And
correct, Shanna?
Correct. So when I first met with this group, the hope was that the ditch could be extended to connect what had been maintained to the spots that we're looking at with culvert number 1 and culvert number 2. And reviewing that area, there was never a ditch there, which means putting in a new ditch would be illegal because it would have permanent impacts to wetlands and would be essentially draining thousands of square footage of wetland, which would have to be mitigated in the end and restored, and it would be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So this was the only viable option, was to move the water overland in pipes temporarily until possibly a more permanent pumping project could happen. And I think to help Mark out with what he's trying to convey, the flow into the lake from these areas is low right now, which means when you're looking at your decision of whether to help put money towards this project or not, it's that this project, and these guys can speak to this as well, is not intended to drain the lake and reduce the flooding to the homes on the lake shore. What it would do is, as they're saying, is turning off the faucet of incoming water so it doesn't compound the issue.
Thank you, Shannon. Commissioner Blaine, I'm gonna let Mr. Steve Bukowski join in here. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just was wanting to verify something with Mark, since it's kind of focusing on this volume of water. Mark, 600 million gallons per day. Can you tell us what you're referencing when you use that number? What volume of water is that referring to?
The 600 million, it's a little bit over that, but the 600 million is estimating of 1 cubic feet per second flowing through the western culvert at this point.
Could that be verified, Mark? The whole lake, if you pump 40 million gallons off of it a day, you'll drop it an inch. That's based on an acre inch over 1,626 acres. So 600 million gallons moving into the lake something doesn't jive, it seems like.
On the amount of flow going in through the western culvert?
Yes, or the combination of the two.
Right. I mean, one thing I've been thinking about is reaching out to St. Paul to see if we can get a more accurate reading device to measure that flow. But our estimates are that 600 million gallons of inflow on a daily basis right now.
Okay. And I think instead of saying what ifs from now on, I think we should concentrate on what they're here for today. They're here for today to put a mechanical pump and pump into that ditch that they had cleaned, and they're asking for our assistance. And the assistance is funding. They need funding to help them get this done. And I think we should circle back, and that's the issue at hand today. And the amount of money that you're looking for, did you say it was 70,000?
75 to 100,000 at this point, and it's, we would need to, go back to the drawing board a little bit more because there continues to be little issues. We need to, really get the details covered, so, but between 75 and 100,000.
And is that total? Is that before you get the additional money from the lid and all that stuff too, or is that what you're gonna need from the county?
That's the total cost.
That's total cost.
So that's the total cost. Now, if there's, if you take the 39,000 off of that,
Okay.
we'd be looking for 61. Now, the other comment I'd just like to make is, that's just for this particular one area of focus. And in our discussions, we've got literally 3 areas of focus that we could bring forth all at once here and say, okay, if you wanted to entertain all of them so we could look at the entire dollar amount, we've got estimates for the 3 areas of focus. But today, I was only looking at getting an idea of what your reaction to this request would be. If you wanted to talk about the others, we're prepared to talk about them too, to some degree.
If you want to briefly go over them other 2 options, I'm sure the gentleman would entertain that.
Sure.
Especially the money part, to get what it would cost us to, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Commissioner Winter.
would this be a little bit better for them to come to the planning commission rather than put it here at the board? Because I personally couldn't make a decision right now if they ask for $1 versus
Right.
100.
And no, I don't think I think this is getting the conversation started, and we can continue it onto the planning commission.
Session, a planning session.
Not
Session,
commission,
excuse me.
planning session. Commissioner Jelinski.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I guess I have a little tiny bit of a question. I get everything that we're talking about. I'm sorry that the water's going high, so let's get over that. We have a lid, we have a lake association, we have a turn off the faucet, we have another association or group on Chaminade, and probably 3 other ones. I don't know. And really, frankly, I don't care. The lid has access to $1 trillion, whatever the number is, doesn't matter, but a whole heck of a lot more than 36,800. My question, my very first question, I've been puzzled, and I'm truly puzzled. What's the lid doing? Well, we know they're doing whatever they're doing. Today we have a new group in front of us that says, we've got an answer, and I get where you're coming from. Turn off a faucet, I understand it. My question, can the lids plan their dollar and cent plan, their tax plan, can that be reworked? Can that be changed? Can we work together? When I say we, I'm talking about turn off the faucet and lid. Can that plan be reworked? It seems to me like we got $3 gazillion somewhere in a tax authority with the lid. Let's use that money. Can we? I don't know the answer to any of that.
If you remember, Mr. Chair, if I can
Yes.
answer that. If you'll remember, on an annual basis, the lid needs to propose and then have approved a budget. And that process begins in the summer when they go to their membership and they say, this is what we have planned, and this is what we're gonna tax those defined parcels, the riparian property owners for. That has been done for this year, and that's being collected this year for the project that they had proposed. If those projects don't move forward, there'll be leftover dollars, and then they need to talk about on the next annual budget cycle what it is they're going to pursue and how they're going to move forward with a project or some type of solution for their overall authority to deal with the lake levels of the water. So on an annual basis, they get a look at what to do with that and how to move forward with whatever it is they're going to pursue for that next year. But they do have the authority to deal with the lake level and mitigating or fixing or helping that lake level where it's at right now. So that overall authority in terms of how they can approach it, I think is fairly broad. It'd be something that we need to look at if there's all of a sudden different scope of a project that doesn't, I'd have to ask the folks that know a little bit more about the authorities of LIDs that do that. But that's my layman's understanding of that, is that they do have, and I know they do because that's their orders of establishment allow them to deal with that lake level. That was something that we had put in place for them.
Yes.
So this year, their project is defined as help me out on directions, because we've talked about them, the outlet, the pumping outlet, yes,
Whatever.
for the northeast part of that. And so they're working towards that. I think there are difficulties. I don't think anything comes without their difficulties, but how they approach their next year's budget as a result of that, I don't know. But I think that what I've learned as we've navigated through this LID process is that if you remember Kurt, not Kurt, but the other one that we dealt with, Mr. Rinky. John Kolb, thank you.
Okay.
John Kolb had indicated, LID is really the best way to fund issues that come in like that are involved in a lake, because that's how that mechanism can be then assessed back to those property owners. And I know that's somewhat of a hard pill to swallow when you're a property owner, but that's kind of how it's set up. That's the point of having one, is that's the best mechanism to do that. But this request is really not for that LID, it's for general tax dollars for you. Not something we have budgeted for the 2020 year, not something that we typically have a line item for. But you guys need to direct and let us know if that's what you want us to take a look at or not. Or if you want them to maybe pursue that Lake Improvement District dollars or something along those lines for the next funding cycle.
And thank you. And Mr. Chair, if I may, I, like Commissioner Wincher, at 10:20 on Tuesday morning, cannot make a decision on, let's write out another check, or let's write out a check. I shouldn't say another. Let's write out a check. I can't do that today. And I would myself personally like to see perhaps this discussion be discussed again at a planning session. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and I don't think the intention was for us to vote today on whether or not we fund this project. We'd have to have a dollar amount in front of us. And
I'd have to have
I think it's more, do you want to continue to proceed forward with looking at the possibility of us helping these gentlemen out and the residents on Lake Shamana, if we want to continue moving forward with having a planning meeting and discussing it further and come up with ways of possibilities of coming up with the funding to help them out. I think that's the purpose of this meeting today.
Mr. Chair, if I may, if I was on the other side of this table, I would be saying, well, I sure hope so, but I don't know that either.
Mr. Chair, if I could,
Yes.
Mark Anderson needs to clarify something with volume. Mark?
Right, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I guess it didn't even dawn on me until after Steve's question. The volume is like 640,000 gallons a day, not 640 million. So I apologize for the confusion on that. I was a little bit dyslexic in my reading my computer screen, but it would come to about 640,000 gallons per day.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Any other questions? Commissioner Wilson?
Yes, I've listened to this stuff for about 4 or 5 years, and I really don't understand, because we keep running into roadblocks. We have a problem. We can see the lake is flooding out, and I don't know why, and I'm not gonna blame, I don't wanna blame Soil and Water, DNR, but those are the people that have to finally come up with a solution to this, and what's it gonna cost the lake owners to do this? And I don't know why we don't get to that point, instead of all the roadblocks that we run into. We think we can't do nothing, but 2 months ago, the government wasn't shut down either. And they shut the government down overnight, so things can change. This lake hasn't gone away. It's been flooding more and more every year. And I'm willing to help on what I need to help, but we gotta be careful at throwing money here, throwing money there. We need a solution to the problem, and what's it gonna cost, and how do we fix it together? So I'm more than willing to listen to things. But I still don't understand. I agree with you on the part, we can't do this, we can't, well, what can we do? And who can do it? You know, that's the part that I can sit here and talk all day, but I want to know how we can drop Lake Chamina. You know, that's what we need to do. And to pumping a little bit, when you talk about pumping and you talk about so many gallons a minute here and by months, could you drain that whole thing out in a week if you had enough pumps? Or is that something that comes gradually that you're talking about? You understand what I'm trying to say? Because I know over in Mora, when the lake flooded there, the guys that do the manure pumping around here with the long hoses, you know, they were pumping 10,000 gallons a minute out of that lake till it got down to where it was supposed to be. And I know it's a fast thing, but I don't know if it's cheaper, if it's, I guess that's my question, so.
Mr. Chair.
You have to pump 40 million gallons a day to drop it 1 inch. So every day you pumped 40 million gallons, you could drop it 1 inch. So how far you want to drop it, that'll give you how many days you got to pump. And then what kind of capacity of pumps?
And Mr. Chair, where does it go? Where does it go? And that's been part of the issue, is that somebody has to pay for it and it has to go somewhere, and that where does it go, I think has been a lot of the question, certainly, and up for debate, and reasonable people disagree about that, but where can it go?
I guess what I'm thinking is if what you presented here, it's going from point A to point B with a pump, they have hoses that pump it. You can pump, if you're gonna pump how many gallons you're gonna pump, they could probably do in 1 week what you're talking about doing all summer. And I don't know, is there a big reservoir there that you could pump that down all at once? Or is this something that water keeps coming into that you gotta keep taking it out as it goes? Or am I on the wrong track here?
Bob?
Well, to answer your question, Commissioner Wilson, I think it's a great question. We've been running up against this. The biggest problem is where to pump it, and flowage easements. I mean, that's what the lid's running into, is where is this water gonna go? Even though they're pumping it, their plan was pumping it to an area that it would infiltrate the ground, it would still end up in the aquifer, and it would be heading to the northeast, and there's flowage easements. Folks would be impacted downstream from this. So this is what's preventing them, and they're getting a lot of pushback from those folks. For us, yeah, we know, I mean, we'd love to put in, we know, I mean, we're looking at these gallons per minute. There's, I think, Mark, there's pumps that can pump this lake dry in a week. It's just, who are we gonna flood doing it, you know? We can put this into our ditch, and our ditch can handle a lot of water. And so, these estimates that Mark Anderson points out, I question them, because I'd like to see an actual measurement of some sort of scientific device that shows us the actual flowage, because but basically, to answer your question, yeah, we can pump it. It's just a matter, we need folks to say, you can do it. If we pump it to our ditch, we've got to get downstream, we've got to get flowage easements from those folks, who are at least agreements from them that says, it's okay, yeah, go ahead. And then, as we did with this project, when we cleaned out the ditch, we monitored the downstream folks on a daily basis. Mark and myself went and visited the Zeta property to see. He's down at the lower left in Todd County, just to see what kind of flowage was going through his property, make sure we weren't flooding. You know, his wife called me in the morning and said, geez, I'm a little concerned, because there's a lot of water coming this way. We're supposed to get rain this weekend. We ran over, took a look. Her culvert was at half, you know. So we're sensitive to that, okay? We don't want to flood anybody out. So ideally, though, you know, if we could get some leniency on WACA, we could make this work without pumps. We could make this whole project work without pumps. But we can't, it doesn't seem like we can get anyone to say yes. Right away, it's that problem. We understand that. But, so, I guess the biggest problem is exactly that, where does the water go? Now, we've identified some other areas too we haven't even touched on. On the west side of the lake, there's 2 large wetlands that could be, you know, pumped under, basically we could directional bore over to some underground swale or some swales over there that are lower than those ponds, and they're larger. So that water also would drain to the northwest, away from us. But again, these are just ideas. We haven't explored that one totally. Chuck Ross could speak for several hours here about all of the different ideas we have, but I don't want to get into that. But to answer your question, it's about where does the water go, and that seems to be our biggest challenge. So pump size, Steve Bukowski and I talked to some degree about how we would do this, blocking the culverts and bring water from 2 to 1, and then how we would move the water from there. And then what would we do if there was a 4-inch rainfall? How would we allow it to? We would allow it to, go over the berm back into the current watershed, into the lake, But it just, my question is like Commissioner Blaine's, we have this, and we've identified these areas 3 square miles to the southeast of the lake that have been impacted over the years and that need to get corrected. And that could be our long-term solution. But in the meantime, we got people underwater. And we got 3 feet over high water, but literally, it'd be worth your time to take a look at it. And I'm totally didn't expect to get an answer from anybody today about, yeah, here's a check, go for it. That would be, unrealistic to expect that. But we just wanted to bring this, put a face to our group. We're a cross-section of all the groups. Lake Chaminade Emergency Task Force, it's just a name we came up with. We're part of all of the groups made up of a cross-section. And so at this particular time, I'd say we'd like to, this is our main focus. This was our what we wanted to bring forward. I think we've got other ones, and we can explore this more at planning meetings, and I'd welcome that opportunity. And we would take a little more time there and get more information and keep serving it up, and then see where this takes us.
All right, Bob, is your goal to get this done this summer?
It'd be great, yeah, we'd love to start it soon. I think that once we're approved for the permit, Shannon mentioned that there's a 15-day public comment period before we can actually get the permit. So in those 15 days, so until we make that decision, it'll be even 15 days after that, so.
All right, Commissioner Jelinski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, money is always an issue. I would like to find out from John Kolb, perhaps, is there an emergency way that, we didn't expect the government to shut down. Commissioner Wilson just stated that a moment ago. Is there an emergency way that the lid financially can work with what we're talking about here? I understand that they have their budget taken care of, I get all that. But is there an emergency way that the lid can say, I don't know where this money's coming from, just so we're on the right page, can say, you know what, we have access to some money. We can give you more than $4,000 out of our gazillion that we're collecting, whatever it might be. I don't know what that number is. I'm just asking the question, don't know. And if we're not gonna ask, we're not gonna know.
That's right.
Good point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I can look into that, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Blaine?
Mr. Frisk, would it be safe to say that let me rephrase this. In your opinion, is the water level in the surrounding wetlands, in the wetlands that are surrounding Lake Chaminade, is the water level in those wetlands increased since, let's say, 2008 or 2003? In the wetlands.
I'm gonna go back further. University of Minnesota has the aerial photography historical site, which is very interesting, goes back to the 1929 era. And then there's continuous maps on up to about 1950s, 58 range, before technology changed into more advanced, whether it's Google, we know Google Earth now, Beacon maps, timelines on Beacon, timelines on other maps. So you can actually see the progression of these wetlands and the changes just by clicking through the photographs on each square mile. And it's amazing to watch the change in the land and in the wetlands and the altercations to impound this water in these, especially these 3 square miles that we're dealing with on the southeast.
So, if I may, Mr.
Yes.
Chair, so where I'm going with this is, you know, when you spoke earlier, you had mentioned that, whether directly or indirectly, you know, the changes to the construction of County Road 3 or 203 up there, Highway 10, other things that have been done that you led me to believe created an effect on, an impact on those wetlands up there. If that's the case, then we should be, if that is true and that is the case, then we should be able to see that there has been a dramatic difference in the water level on the surrounding wetlands, not just on the lake. Correct?
That's correct. And the elevations justify that a 2-foot increase on the south part of those miles of all adjacent to County Road 3, everything north of 203, a 2-foot impact or rise in elevation sends all of that water towards Lake Chaminade, towards this berm. The berm used to hold the water when I was growing up. We've hunted ducks in the AMA, wasn't AMA at the time. The berm was always there. It's a man-made road. The farmer built it to get it to a field on the other side of his property. It's not a beaver dam. It's a constructed sand road berm. Always a 4-foot differential on the north side, Lake Chaminade side versus the south side of the berm, because 1/3 of that wetland drained towards Lake Chaminade. That's the elevation. 2/3 of that entire wetland used to drain towards Lake Alexander before all these impactions. So again, our problem is a man-made problem over the last 30 or 40 years. It's changed that much.
Ms. Wetstein?
Pardon me?
Shannon has a question.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I receive calls every day from all over the county with my wetland is bigger than I remember it to be. When we're looking at this problem, I think we have to be honest with ourselves that there's people all around that are experiencing flooding issues, high groundwater tables on their properties. So as Bob had said earlier, the problem really is, where do we put this water when no one wants it? Now, the trade-off again, if common sense prevails and we do, you know, whatever to ignore WACA, is that you lose water quality. You add a ditch here, you drain a wetland here, you potentially are looking at water quality impacts to Lake Chaminade. Now, that might not show up immediately, but that is going to be the other side of the coin. That's why the Wetland Conservation Act is in place, is because no one wanted the water and most of the wetlands were drained. And water quality was significantly reduced. You don't have to go far from here to see the impacts of ditching on public waters. Moving forward, you know, our office and the county has always been happy to work with these groups and to help advise the commissioners. But I just want to remind the commissioners of, you know, the water issues throughout the county and the surrounding areas of the lake, and the trade-off with doing some of the proposed projects that, you know, are out there that may or may not be allowed. But also, you know, when we're looking at the lake, there's impacts that were put there, houses that were put in floodplains that now we know better. They should never have been there. in the first place. And now those properties are flooded, and we're trying to create a solution for them while creating other problems in other areas potentially. Now, floodplain maps are not going to be available for Morrison County for quite some time yet, and any sort of flood mitigation relief that would provide. And again, that's not immediate, that's looking at the long term of this. But my opinion is that we should also be exploring the option of buyouts, if possible, in the areas that were built on. So to kind of, remind everyone that impacts by property owners over time not knowing any better maybe, and by creating roads so that people could get to the cabins and homes, it all does build up, like Mark said, over 30 years of time. But there's some things that have been done that really are going to continue to be problems, whether they're not now immediate, but 20 years from now again.
Thank you, Shannon. Gentlemen, any other questions? Bob, Mark?
No, I think it's time to wrap it up. Bob said, can you go to a 20-minute meeting tomorrow morning? So I sure appreciate your time. We all do. I can speak for the whole group. We need to work together on this, obviously. This planning meeting, hopefully Steve and Shannon can be involved with that also, and just sit down and have a discussion at a table and see what we've learned. That brainstorming really has give us some new avenues. So I think that's what we need to do next. I don't know how you schedule that or when it is, but it would be beneficial to us to have you participate with us on that and move forward with this.
Very good. Commissioner Wilson?
Just a question. You said you had like 3 different phases possibly or something like that.
Sure.
I would like to know the money with all 3 phases so that, I think
Yeah.
we've been doing things that are just, this is this, and then, now we got to go to the next phase, but it didn't really solve anything in the first phase. So I'd
Okay.
like to see what it is.
These are ballpark numbers, but they're estimates. If we go out the west side, let's say, and well, first of all, our number one focus and let's say nod to approved from the DNR was the northeast corridor. I'll call it the northeast corridor, pumping to the swale. Chuck Ross has been working on that a lot, and he has a number around 100,000. Could be a little bit more to get some boring done and to put in a siphon system to the swale in the northeast corridor. So we'll call it the northeast corridor. In Mark Anderson's response when we initially showed him our idea map here and study map was he liked that because it was done before, it worked, and so he was favorable to it. So that one I would look at it about 100,000 roughly. And that one would not use a lot of electricity because it would be a directional bore, and it would have a gravity feed and a siphon effect. I could let Chuck elaborate more on that as he gets further on that study. The other one is to the west side of the lake, and if you wanted to zoom in a little bit on that map to where all the blue dots are, to that west side there. Yeah, right there. You'll notice, right there, Bob's Lake, okay? I'm Bob, that's my lake. That lake is flooding my place. It's got a purple outline on it. It's 3 feet or 2 feet over. It's normal area. So another thing we looked at was pumping from there. You'll see the purple line down south. We would take that down to our current ditch. The idea there is that we pump from there down to our ditch. That water will refill that. Currently, the western bay is average about over 8 feet deep. The eastern bay on that is about 6 to 7 feet, and that was as of December March when we punched those holes and took those readings. That lake that lake or that wetland is connected underground from, to the lake. We're convinced of it. Elevation-wise, we took a shot of that, and it actually is 7 inches lower than the lake as far as top of water. That water could be moved several ways, but the cost of that to run for a, I just want to check here. I got an estimate on that one, and that was one of the early ones we looked at. That one is about $95,000. And that particular one, the specifics on that are, that would run for a month, and we could lower it by 3 feet. But that was just for a month, 95,000. If we ran it longer, this was a mechanical pump, diesel, two pumps, running it down through there. We could pump that down. Average daily diesel fuel charge, 100 gallons a day. So roughly 95,000 for, okay, just give you a ballpark. Of course, now we'll add some diesel fuel to that and start talking about multiple weeks. We're up, we could easily spend 150 grand. So that's the west side, pumping from Bob's Lake. And the idea there is based on Mark's theory of the water moves horizontally, and we're seeing that with the ditch clean out, water's moving horizontally across the landscape, so we're seeing some things go down. My lake has dropped about 2 inches in the last month or so. So the other one then, so that would be, number one is northeast corridor, number two is out to the west. There's a couple of different options there. If you'll notice that and you zoom in on that a little more, you'll notice there's 2 swales to the west side of of Highway 10. Those swales are deeper and bigger than Bob's Lake. So if we bored underground and poured water into that, that would dissipate and head off to the northwest from what we've been told. That was another favorable option that Mark and Tim at the DNR looked when we presented it to them. They thought that was a good option. I don't have a cost for that one. Chuck, do you have any costs on that? It's around $250,000. So $250,000. Due to the fact we have to go under a U.S. highway, we'd have to have a double wall culvert and excess, so $250,000 there. And then, of course, our little shut off the faucet project costs there as what we estimated here. So those are the 3 big ones that we know of. As far as one other item that we've discussed, and Steve Bukowski maybe can give us an idea on this, is we've asked for a culvert under County Road 202 Aztec. That would also allow us to push water through the golf course from Bob's Lake down through and into Lena Lake. That water doesn't have to be filtered because it's coming from the wetland there. And we know that water moves that way. Currently, the water on the north side of Aztec Road is 18 inches higher than the water on the south side, which is Lena Lake's top of water level. And we know that the water in Lena does go out and under Highway 10 by itself naturally without pumping. We would have to, so anyhow, just a couple of options there. And then I don't know what a cost for a culvert is under 202. I'd have to ask Steve Bukowski what some costs there would be. And I think there's some challenges because he didn't locate a culvert when he did a locate here in the last week or two. The other, there's other options, but those are our big 3.
All right. Any other questions? All right.
Mr. Chair, direction for me, just moving forward. I know that I'm gonna work with John Kolb, and I think we need to maybe get some reminders on funding and what is best and what is advised when it comes to funding these types of projects, or something that's specific, and about how a lid ought to work and maybe should work, and you as a board in terms of funding with general tax dollars. And so I think that maybe is a good, at least kind of what I'm gathering would be a good conversation to remind us all exactly why we were advised to look at a lid and move forward with that, and why not, perhaps, so you're aware of those options. Because a lot of this is coming down to asking for money, and that hasn't been something in terms of how we have approached this before, and there was reason for that, and so I want to just get us all on the same page again.
Any other questions, gentlemen?
I just like it simple. I'd like a meeting with everybody and we find a solution to this problem. I'm sorry, I don't know how else to say it. You know, we can talk and talk and talk, but we know what the problem is, and if there's no solution, we need to know that, then you start buying houses out if that's the solution or whatever. But this has been going on long enough that you guys gotta have some solution somewhere. I don't know how else to say it.
If I may, Mr. Chair, this is frustrating even for me listening to you guys. I listened to the lid, I listened to you guys. Give us a plan that's gonna work. Again, even with the lid, when they came us with the money, well, we can do this, we can do this. And they were just asking for things that, again, my personal opinion, was it wasn't gonna happen, because it seems like we all, you know, let's buy the houses out. Well, is that gonna work? It's not our job to find out what's gonna work. It's whoever over there, whether it's the DNR has to weigh in, or the WACA, or any of these, you have to get to them, my personal opinion, say, what can we do to make this work? If you say, well, like a DNR, they say, well, that looks favorable. Well, would you support it? Well, let's see. And that's where your frustrations comes in too, because they never give you a direct answer. You know, if they say, yep, we can shoot the water up to the sun, would you support that? Well, I don't know. Myself personally, that's what I want. I want an answer that's gonna work for you guys, that you can move forward to it. If you say, yep, we can do this, if we can get the land, well, don't come to us. Go to that person and say, will you sell us your land? Will you give us the right of way? No. Well, see, that stops it. It's like we're putting the horse behind the cart rather than in front of it, my opinion.
Commissioner, thanks, Commissioner Winshire. Appreciate that input. Really, the project we put in front of you here, turn off the faucet, it's, I guess you could call it very close to being ready. We've had a TEP meeting. The reason we're here is because it was suggested we come and present this to you guys because we need some money. So that one is. I understand what you're saying though. Yeah, because a lot of stuff could be blue sky. But that one is actually really close, and we've feted it out, so to speak, to the best of our ability, so.
Thank you for that.
Very good. Good, gentlemen?
Dale Williams. I just wanted to make one comment, and we did make a presentation at the state hearing for this bonding thing. And after the presentation, the legislator for this district met with us. And his comment was, but there are some people that are opposed to your project. And he would have us believe that the only way going forward for the project was that everyone would be in agreement. And there will never be a situation where everybody is going to be in agreement on Chaminade. And right now, a few people are in opposition, and there will always be those people that are in opposition to it. And all I'm saying is that there will come a time, we will come before you as the body that you will authorize it, and there will be a few people in opposition. And we have to choose and make the best case forward and move forward. And let those people be in opposition. I'm sorry, we hear you, but it's a democracy. We're not all gonna be unanimous. And for that guy in Little Falls to tell us that everybody had to be in agreement, no, we got to choose the best course and move forward.
Thank you. Gentlemen? Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Bob. We'll continue having a discussion. I'm not sure when, but I'll have Deb get a hold of you guys, and we can sit down and have a discussion at that time with Steve and Shannon and ourselves. And
Appreciate it, thanks for your time.
Get us some
Thank you very much.
solid numbers,
Thanks,
what you
gentlemen.
expect
Thanks,
from us.
Shannon.
You take your cup.
Okay, Mark, I'm gonna hang up now.
Good. We're gonna take a 5-minute, please.
Yes, thanks.
See you, gentlemen. Thanks, Jen. Come.
I'm like, who's
Information. I just don't know. Yeah, well. Like I said, we gotta find a solution. I think if we realize that we can do something.
I was gonna,
She came up with the best, gave us something to go for, and so it was the first time I think we've
and,
got someone.
and we'll approve it, we'll be approving it, so.
I have 2 questions. Thank you for the whole summary of everything. You know, looking at going through wetlands, emptying the wetland. But if we don't empty the wetland,
Tabitha, where did you move to approximately? You don't have to give me your address. Oh, okay.
might be able to drop down a little bit below and back up is fine, but not
Okay, good.
disturbing wetland.
So that was quick. I thought maybe it was a brother or something.
Disturb the wetland and
Restore it. Gradual.
time frame. Is that if a yes or no? Option last for you. Not in any soils that are.
Maybe a toughie. Well, correct, but they got to listen, you know. It's so frustrating that, like I says, I don't know why they can't all sit in the room. Someone's gonna have to give it on some state, or somebody's gotta give.
Well, it's not even so much given, they'll say, well, if we do this, will you approve it?
I agree. But that's where it's got authority.
But the thing is,
Less than a mile.
Brad, you got your 3 minutes.
yeah, you gotta talk fast.
That's something that I'm talking about, that would be a
Yeah.
solution for this. And ultimately,
Oh, I did, whenever I lived on it, whenever.
I wasn't.
You know, they got a lot of problems up there, but just find solutions, don't, it's money, money, money. The lid should be here. But I don't think they can look at it. And I believe I had a doctor's appointment, I could take 11:10. I took 2:30. I said, there's no way we can do that.
Well, you certainly did. I'm supposed to be. I told him, I said,
You have a 1:30 today?
so I don't think that's gonna happen. No, unless Brad gives me 1 minute of his time.
I mean, Commissioner.
Right, yeah.
month.
And look at here, monthly rental,
Absolutely.
$7,700.
Wow. Sorry.
And like, that's why I brought up the is like, what are they doing with theirs? Well, which is true, they can't allocate that.
Hey, let's get moving. All get in our chairs.
I'm surprised, what's his name, Bob?
He didn't know. No, board meeting, loud
How are you ladies doing today?
We're talking about, yeah,
He's got an RCCC meeting?
yeah, I can't remember his name, but yeah, I know who you're talking about.
We have an
Because he
RTCC
didn't know.
meeting on Thursday or Wednesday? Did I just get that text a little bit ago? Okay. Yeah.
Hurry.
Huh?
That's okay, Tabitha and Deb are in here. Oh, I spoke
I
to
didn't read it, I don't know, I didn't read it all, I
We're
just
already
seen it
past
came through,
Brad.
so-
Wow,
Way past.
I
We got
didn't
the
expect
sheriff,
that
we
to
got the
happen.
extension done, we should be at the auditor's
You
report.
can tell Sean to come on in.
Well, we should be done, adjourned.
It's 10:35. Holy rights. Little off today. It's all right.
This is, Alaskan time.
That's okay, it's kinda cloudy and it rains on and off today. What the heck?
Any difference, that's right.
What the heck?
It doesn't make any difference.
But I say that lid, that's gonna be the one that, like Deb's right though, we can't get no money out of that.
One item for social services this morning, and that is actually proclaiming May as Foster Care Month. So I asked Sarah and Melanie to come in and read the proclamation.
Good morning, Sarah. Morning, Melanie.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Thanks to Sarah Pratt for being here with me for the adult foster care licensing, and I supervise child foster care licensing. As May is Foster Care Proclamation Month, our Foster Care Month, we wanted to do a proclamation. Whereas the family serving as the primary source of love, identity, self-esteem, and support is the very foundation of our communities, our state, and our country. And whereas in 2020, Morrison County Social Services currently has 52 licensed foster families, relative foster families, who have opened their homes and hearts to children whose families are in crisis, play a vital role in helping children and families heal, reconnect, and launch children into successful adulthood. And whereas Morrison County Social Services currently has 42 licensed foster care providers who have opened their homes to provide a family environment to individuals with developmental disabilities, mental illness, and who are elderly. And whereas there are numerous individuals, public and private organizations who work to increase public awareness of the needs of children and adults in foster care, as well as enduring and valuable contribution of foster care providers. Now therefore, we, the Morrison County Board of Commissioners, do hereby proclaim May as Foster Care Month in Morrison County and urge all citizens to volunteer their talents and energies on behalf of children, adults in foster care, foster parents, and the professional staff working with them during this month and throughout the year.
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Winter, second by Commissioner Blaine. Discussions?
Just want to thank everybody for all the work they do. I know this is a lot of work for people, and we're glad they're there. So it takes special people to do this stuff.
Yeah, just one note, Kayla from Sourcewell was not able to be here, but she also assists in our adult foster care licensing. We work with Sourcewell on that particular program, so.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Jelinski.
Melanie, can you just take a brief moment or so and just kind of highlight adult foster care? I get foster care, where little children were in foster care, or we're 15 and 16, but can you just kind of highlight, and I'm sorry, Sarah, highlight adult foster care?
So it may be people with developmental disabilities or
Probably
mental
answered.
health or, those kind of things, medical,
Okay.
that need a higher level of care.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much. I
You're welcome.
appreciate it a lot. Takes, as Commissioner Wilson said, it takes tremendously special people to do what we're talking about, and thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We also have one adult foster home for older adults, so they work with elderly.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We got a motion and a second. Any just further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Melanie.
All right, I have a couple items under public health, and the first one is I just wanted to give you overall stats about our produce drop. I asked Carmen and Sarah to put together some statistics, and so pretty impressive in terms of just the number of households, the elderly, the kids. If you look at it, it's about 498 hours of staff time put into it. That's not exactly accurate. We kind of average some things. So we are still in the process of looking to see if we can get a grant, a transportation grant. If we're not successful there, we're going to submit an application to Sourcewell, who now has some funds available for COVID relief. So, and if you average it out, I asked Melissa to average out kind of the average salary of an employee, and it's $27.43. And so if you take that times just the number of staff hours, it's just under $14,000 in staff time on an average. So very impressive, I think, in terms of, as I said, just the number of households we reached and individuals we were able to provide produce to. So I thought it'd be nice just to do an overall kind of snapshot of what we did.
And Mr. Chair, if I could, some of the intent with that staff time stat was we knew we there are areas that were less busy when our doors weren't open. And so we wanted to make sure we directed that cost that we were incurring anyway and really directly helping and serving in a COVID-related capacity when it comes to food insecurities. And so I don't want to lose that in that statistic that, you know, these are folks that were here and we were paying anyway, and we wanted to make sure that the value that they were bringing to the residents was still existing in this time.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I think along with that, Deb, is that we're self-insured, so we're gonna pay staff regardless if they're here or they're not here.
Yep, for unemployment insurance, exactly. And so we wanted to try to supplement that to really remind staff what it is we do here and how we help folks and as far as really engagement and things of that nature. So there was multi-level of good really that came out of this project, yep.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. To you and your staff, you should be, we're grateful for everything that you did. This is, you know, you look at all the elderly served, it's a wonderful thing.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
In respect, all of Morrison County that was involved in this, I mean, in respect to Brad, it wasn't just public health, it wasn't just social services, it was the entire staff of Morrison County. I looked to see, and I see the sheriff in the back. It was the sheriff, his staff. Everybody was involved in, and I personally, I can't say enough, and thanks for that, Mr. Chair. The hearts that this event touched, it's second to none. So, again, thanks to everybody.
All right, thank you. I have one food, beverage, and lodging license renewal, and that's for Pine Grove Zoo for their seasonal establishment.
Gentlemen?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Jelinski.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Blaine. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. And then I'd just like to make one notation about June 1st and food, beverage, and lodging establishments that may need to be open or can be open for patio dining only. So I've talked with the county attorney. I spoke with Sean Larson this morning, and then I just asked Amy today about those establishments that may not have a patio per se. Really, according to the state, anything that's contiguous to the establishment can be used for a patio. I think most of our establishments in the county would be able to have some type of seating arrangement for patio-only dining. I'm not sure yet kind of which establishments are going to do that. But I do think that there are going to be options available for them, and I don't think you as a county board are going to need to do anything in particular to change kind of where we're at for those establishments. So I just wanted to make you all aware of that. And so, as I said, I'm not sure which ones may open now for patio dining versus just dine out or carry out. But I think there's that option for them unless other things change, but. So I just want to make that.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you. Commissioner Wilson.
Brad, do we have, if a bar, for instance, puts up a tent and has patio dining along there, can they have liquor outside then? Is there any problem with liquor outside in the county?
As long as it's contiguous to their establishment, they should be able to serve drinks on the patio.
Okay. Another question, Deb, are we gonna talk about that later? Or I wanted to talk about the licenses, about reimbursing people some of that money if possible, or?
I'm gonna bring that to a planning meeting. I'm still having Sarah and Mary look at kind of the statistics around how much there is and so forth. So I'm gonna bring that to a planning meeting for further discussion.
Okay.
Anything else, gentlemen? Thank you, Brad.
Thank you. I'm not sure I quite caught you up, but I tried.
Thanks, Brad. Good job.
Next on the agenda, Sheriff's report. Welcome, Sheriff.
Good morning, Sheriff.
Morning, Sheriff.
Morning.
So it looks like the first thing we have is a replacement that we're looking for. We have a full-time employee that is retiring from our jail, and just asking the board permission to fill that position.
Gentlemen?
I'll make a motion for that.
Motion by Commissioner Wilson.
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Jelinski. Any discussions?
This is a common question I always ask, Mr. Chair. Do you need to replace this person?
Yes, we do.
Common answer.
Common answer.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And then I'll just really kind of go through this report fairly quick. We had a busy weekend. We had 10 in custodies. So our numbers are actually spiked a little bit, and reports, I's need to be dotted, T's need to be crossed. So this is just a picture of our monthly training in April. We went out to Pierce Fish Lake. We utilized our cold water rescue suits, and then we have an inflatable boat as well. And we had some decoys and just actually took the time to go out there and not only practice with the suits, but once you get on the ice, how do you stay safe? How are you able to stand up? So kind of getting yourself on the ice and rolling far enough away from the open water and standing up, and good training. Luckily this year we didn't have to use it at all. Usually in the spring it's, we usually get a call or two, but knock on wood, we didn't have that this year, but it's always good to be prepared. Deb Gruber said she was gonna bring some treats out for us. I don't think that ever happened, but.
Did not, because Sheriff Larson didn't tell me exactly the correct time on when you were starting, so.
Okay. Outside of that, if you move down to the criminal complaints, we had 62 criminal complaints. Just really to highlight this, we had the green triangle, 12%, 3 o'clock position, was disturbing the peace. We had 10 complaints, even though it says 12%. And then the 5 o'clock position, the blue triangle, we had 20 thefts. And to go, basically breakdown of that, 9 thefts were from a vehicle, not the vehicle itself, but inside the vehicle. We had 5 thefts from a building or a yard, 1 from a person, 3 thefts of check, 1 was credit card, and 1 gas drive-off. And then our traffic citations, pretty steady, and similar to previous months. We had 13 citations issued for speed, 20 written warnings, 101 verbal warnings. And if you look at our 2-year comparison, everything is down across the board. Good percentage of that is because of COVID-19, of course. The only exception is our drug investigations. That has inclined. And part of that was because we put the new drug task force position on last March, and we kind of talked about how it's going to take probably a full year to get that training. Well, we have that training, and now it's full bore. So our inmates, you can see we have 16 we averaged in the month of April. I called today before I came in here. We have 32 right now. So 10 of those 32 are actually in custodies over the weekend. So we'll see how many of those actually stay. No out-of-county inmates, of course, because of COVID-19. So our average stays the same. And then across the board, our sentence to serve program, because of COVID-19, we weren't out and about. We've changed that now. We're going to allow sentence to serve program with our inmates. However, we're going to be selective as to what we're doing. We're going to stay away from people and crowds. We're going to do a lot of going in the ditches, cleaning ditches, things of that nature. So staying productive. The drug case I just want to highlight for April is Richardson Township. We did a search warrant. We arrested a subject for first-degree possession. We found approximately 2 pounds of methamphetamine. We found cocaine. We found illegal pills. We found over $5,000 worth of cash that we seized. So I've been working with the county attorney's office trying to figure out what we can do for this gentleman, because he's been a real pain for us. There's a lot of neighbors, citizens of Morrison County that have called in multiple times, and we've tried to work a case, and it's been tough. But we were able to get enough info where we were able to draft a search warrant, get it signed by a judge, and now we have this product. So I definitely want him to see some prison time and go away, because, like I said, he's been a real pain for a lot of the neighbors and citizens of this county. So.
Good job.
Excellent.
I looked up the street value, and this is just approximate values. It was $6,000 a pound, but since COVID-19, I guess I don't have the answers. It might be more of a demand now. But we're looking at $6,500 on an average per pound right now for methamphetamine. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Gentlemen, any questions?
That's all I got. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Sheriff, thank you.
Next on the agenda, extension report.
Mr. Chair, the report was included in your packet, and for your review. And if you have questions, you certainly can direct those towards the extension staff. And just as an update from there, I know they were working last week, the week before, for relocating to their permanent home. A lot of the educators or the contract workers, I don't want to call them employees, but contract staff positions, I'm not sure that they've been released yet to come in. I know Suzanne was trying to work with that. It wasn't as easy as we had hoped to get them in here and released to be able to be in the office, even if they were in separate days. But Gloria, I know, is moved. We're waiting on her furniture. There was a couple of pieces that needed to be included and gotten a later order. So it's a little bit makeshift now, but it'll get done and it'll come in the next time that we can have an order come in. But otherwise, the extension is going to be on the west side building, in the 1960s building, up on the second floor. So that will be ready to go and hopefully in the short order be normal-ish in terms of how they're operating. So
Thank you.
that.
Next on the agenda is, yes.
Mr. Chair, I have a kind of off the cuff here with the extension. It was brought to my attention, if I may, that we did lose one of the University of Minnesota educators that, called on the tri-county area. And they're requesting that we replace that person. And I just wanted to make sure that we had the board's approval. It'll cost, again, we approved their, it was like about $13,000 a year. So, but I did not want to make that decision without the board's approval. So I guess if you have any questions about that, they're waiting to see if we should hire someone or not, replace someone.
So are they going to come before the board, or are you requesting us to move forward with it?
Question to you to decide. I mean, again, if you don't want to decide at this time, I know it's a little inappropriate here, it wasn't on the agenda, but they're asking me to bring it forward, so.
Gentlemen?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Commissioner Winter and I both sit on the Extension Committee board, on the board, and it's a livestock educator that they would be replacing. It's not hiring a new person. It is hiring a new person. It's not hiring a new position. It is hiring a replacement to that position. And that's all there is to it. It's just a replacement position.
All right, well, if one of you gentlemen would like to make a motion, and
I'll make a motion that we replace the educator for the Tri-County area.
And I will second that.
motion made by Commissioner Winter, second by Commissioner Jelinski. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for bringing that forward, gentlemen. Next up on the agenda is the approval of precious metal dealer licenses.
Mr. Chair, Chelsea's on her way down with the delay in agenda timing. She was coming down, so she's right here, and I can quit babbling and filling time randomly because she's right here.
Good morning, Chelsea.
Good morning, Chelsea.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Great, thank you.
Good. On the agenda today, I have precious metal license renewals for Goldsmith Jewelers, Milgram Jewelers, and Like New Gun and Pawn.
Gentlemen, could I get a motion second?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Commissioner Blaine,
Second?
second by Commissioner Wilson. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Next on the agenda, I have the cash report for end of April. Again, this is in your packet that you see monthly. So it shows a snapshot of our current month and then last year where we were at this time. So it gives you a visual for all departments.
Thank you. Gentlemen,
Yes.
any questions on that?
one thing that I would like to add that would kind of fall into this is, we just had our spring tax collection. And so, just to give you an update, we did collect, we were at 25 million. So right on track for collection for the spring. So just an update with that too.
Excellent.
Thank
On
you.
our financials.
So, Mr. Chair, if I
Commissioner
may
Blaine.
ask a question, there was concern going into this spring tax collection that, and we took the action to reduce the penalty. So my question is the percentage or the number of those who are late or have not paid their taxes yet is not greater than what we have seen in past years at this time?
That is a good question. As far as that percentage, I don't have that percentage in front of me right now. I can say that our collection is on point like normal years, and I would be able to give you an update at next board meeting on how many late notices we'll be sending out next month, prior to last year and the years before, if we're right on target or if we're showing an uptick or not.
So Mr. Chair, since you'd have to go back and look for and get that information, it would be fair to say that, in getting that information to be accurate, it'd be fair to say that we didn't see a big spike in the number of people who deferred to pay their taxes to late, as maybe we were anticipating.
You know, that's a hard question to answer just because I know that some have, you know, had the opportunity and taken it to pay their taxes in full at the beginning of the year. So as far as a number of individuals who haven't paid versus some who have maybe paid for the full year, it's hard to nail down that question.
And I apologize to you, Chelsea, for that. Now now I understand, because you're looking at this from the revenue perspective, and that gets skewed by the fact that some people will pay their entire property tax at the beginning rather than having it split. So I understand. We'll look forward to that, to those numbers when we meet again. So,
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next up is approve the warrants.
I'm asking for a motion to approve warrants.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to pay all of the bills.
Motion by Commissioner Jelinski,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Blaine, approve the warrants. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
Roll call.
I see if you guys are, you're supposed to catch me. Commissioner Wincher,
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski.
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Myself, aye. Motion carried. Thanks for catching that, Deb.
And Mr. Chair, if I could ask Chelsea just to give kind of a brief update about what's going on upstairs and how things are working. I know we had a couple glitches.
Yes. So I was going to give an update about motor vehicle and elections, so I can certainly do that. Motor vehicle started today by appointment only for driver's license and title transfers in person. So that is going well. We used the no wait application, and we're learning how that works today because it's our first day. And of course, with new software, it's a time, you know, before we get all the kinks out, and it's going to work great for us. But at this point, it's working well. The communication is there. My staff is able to call in individuals who have made an appointment by a text message or notifying them what door to meet them at in order to come into the office, because we have to flow the traffic for our office. And that is going well. I know that our motor vehicle department is, I believe, the only one doing driver's license and title transfers in person right now. Looking at our surrounding counties, I don't believe that they're open at this time doing face-to-face transactions, so I believe we are one of the first.
Very good. Gentlemen, Commissioner Wincher.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to give Deb and all the staff and you, Chelsea, to open up, because I think this was well needed to do that, and I know we're taking the right precautions. And again, I appreciate all the work that everyone here's done for that, so Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, we're happy to be back to normal a little bit. And then I just wanted to give an update too on elections. Elections, we have the candidacy filing open for federal, state, judicial offices, along with our county offices, county commissioner, and then soil and water districts. So that is open right now through next Tuesday. And then end of next month, we'll start early voting, so
Very good.
we're gearing up.
Any questions? Thank you for the update.
Yes, thank you guys.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Have a
Great
good day.
Next on the agenda, Public Works, requesting a motion to approve granting a 2020 annual solid waste hauler license to Marvin Treader.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Wilson, second by Commissioner Wincher. Any discussion? I assume Steve supports this?
Yes.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next on the agenda, Administrator's report. Ms. Gruber?
Mike is here to give a construction update. I'll jump to that first, if you don't mind.
Sure. Welcome, Mike.
Good morning.
Morning, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
You have a smile on your face, so I'm thinking that things are still okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You gotta smile.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
I handed copies of the updated budget. There really hasn't been a whole lot of change in this since the last time. We're still sitting just above $80,000 in contingency. So I don't know if there's any other questions in there at all, so.
Everything going good?
Everything's going well. Sheriff's office right now, we're framing walls, just about wrapped up with that, roughing and electrical. Plumbing is roughed in, roughing in the heating lines, ventilation system. And so, we've got electrical inspection scheduled for later this week. And all rough-in should be pretty well wrapped up by the end of next week, and then we'll start sheet rocking up there.
Great.
So,
When's the completion for the sheriff's gonna be?
looking to move in August. Yep. And then we have started on the public safety annex, and that's framed up
Seen
right
that.
now.
Yeah, that's cool.
And they started putting the roof steel on Friday, so. We did get the services roughed into the building for now, and it'll kind of be like that until we get the building up.
Sure.
Something to work on, so.
Any questions for Mike? All right, well, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Mike.
Deb?
A quick update on the parking lot reconstruction. June 8th is when that is scheduled to start. I had sent out a message to all staff on Friday, and you'd have been copied on it, kind of gave an update in a number of different components. But June 8th, that'll start. I've asked staff to not park in the visitor parking lot. We had a little bit of a kind of a nice break from finding a parking place for a couple of months when public wasn't welcome in, but now that they're welcome and whatnot, we'll go back to normal until the construction starts on the parking lot, and then we'll have to redirect. We opened this morning. There's staff from administration sitting upstairs, and it's been busy, they said. A lot of folks coming in. It's frustrating for the public, and I know that, and I feel empathy towards the public who just wants to get the work done, and we want to help them, but we need to be able to operate in a safe environment. And so things like making appointments for driver's license, like Chelsea said, is what's just going to have to be the normal for now. And we're going to work through that as quickly as possible to get people in. We're going to try to have as many appointments as possible because it's a revenue source, and staff understands that and are working towards that, but it's going to take some time to get there. As she indicated, we're doing that as soon as we possibly can, and some of our counterparts haven't yet. And so we'll get there, and it's going to be better than ever once we get things worked out, but it's going to take some time to get a little bit familiarized with that for everybody, both staff and for the public, to do that. Other than that, we're ticking away, and figuring out what adjustments need to be made in different areas, and how we need to move forward, if any, as we work through this new normal.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Jelinski?
Deb, I know you don't have a crystal ball in front of you. Would you anticipate, just a guess, that's all I'm looking for, is if everything worked the way it's supposed to, if they started parking lot construction on the 8th, are we looking at a week? Are we looking at a month? Are we looking at, do you have an idea?
They told me 3 to 4 weeks for the Horseshoe West, and then another 3 to 4 weeks for the Horseshoe East. And so depending upon weather, I think is really the major factor, and the unknown is why we have that I don't know, leeway or that gap or that time period.
So 6 weeks to 2 months to get the
6
parking
weeks,
lot?
6 to 8 to get it completely finished.
Very
Yeah,
good.
because they have to do a tear out,
Yep.
and then they'll have to
whatever they do.
resurface, and all the sidewalks will be ADA compliant, all of that's going to be built up, and so the access for that is gonna be tough, because it's that horseshoe, so any of those 2 south doors, both the employee-only entrance and the main south door where the public would park and normally access, I guess, isn't going to be available that first 3 to 4 weeks. And so the west side, which right now is locked because that's our motor vehicle area, so again, how we limit that access, how we kind of meter people coming in, we're going to have to take a look at that again and adjust accordingly, and then the north side will be available for the public to enter there, so.
Very good, thank you very much.
Mr. Blaine?
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, did we ever decide what we're gonna do, or what was the decision that was made with our assortment of county vehicles that park in that horseshoe? What will happen post-construction?
No, now you're challenging my brain. We talked about a couple of different options, and what was the final decision? For now, in the interim, they're going out to Public Works, because we want them out of the lot completely. So the limited access that we're going to have for parking ought to be for the public. So we want to move those out there. Instead of saying wrong, I would rather just hold off a bit and get the right information to you. Yep.
Just curious, and if we don't know off the top of our head, you know.
And whether that's been totally decided, I don't know for sure, but out of the main parking lot is what was desired, and make sure that those prime spots are held for the public. I can't remember where it was, though.
And then my only other question is you know, from a public safety standpoint, as far as the sheriff, and because his staff or his squad uses a lot of that area in that second section that's gonna be worked. They understand this, and they're going to be able, this isn't going to impact how we serve the public then with this. We can manage this.
Yep, we have no choice but to do that. So, yes, we will be managing it. Everybody's gonna do the best they can to make sure that they have the access that they need, because that's priority.
I guess I don't know, we never talked about that, but I mean, we have the Sallyport entrance there, I mean, there's reasons we have secure entrances, and for public safety, and for when law enforcement has people that need to be dealt with, there, but that also those accesses will also be impacted by this construction, so.
Yep. In the interim, it is going to be difficult. You're right. When it comes to that couple week period when they're working on that side of the area, the building for the parking lot, yeah, we're going to have to find another way to do business. And luckily, we've kind of been doing that for a few months. And so adjustments and a few years now, when you look at the start of the building project in terms of really making do and making shifts as we go in terms of what we have to do to make things work.
Yeah, I'm sure that you and Sean and everyone else will find the right avenues to deal with that for that short period of time, so just curious.
Yeah, good question. Yep. That is all I have for now, gentlemen. If there's anything else that I'm missing or you're waiting on, you gotta just let me know.
All right, thank you, Deb.
Yep.
Calendars, gentlemen?
Days,
Yep,
Mike?
June 2nd, planning session at 8:30, and Board of Adjustments at 7 o'clock in the evening.
Is it 7? Is it 7 or is it 5:30? I looked at a thing, excuse me.
Got my WebEx says 5:30 here.
Yeah,
so-
mine too. That's what I was just gonna say.
Yes, I don't know. I got Board of Adjustments at 7, but
I
WebEx.
believe it's 7, but I'll verify with Sharon.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
On the 4th, I got CMCOA Board and Sartell, but I'm sure it's gonna be over the internet. On the 5th, TSWAC at 8:30, and that's out at the landfill, I presume?
Yep.
Okay. On the 9th, the board meeting at 9 o'clock, and right now, that looks like all I have.
Commissioner Blaine?
I have nothing to add.
Commissioner Zelinski?
Mr. Chair, I've got a few things to add. June 1st at 6:30, there's a Morrison County Public Safety meeting. I believe that's going to be held via video conference of some kind. And on the 4th at 10 o'clock in the morning, I have a State Emergency Communications Board Legislative Committee meeting. That's held by phone from my house. On the 5th, although we do have a TSWAC meeting, I have to chair, or I chair the EMS Joint Powers Board in Stearns County, so I'm probably gonna have to skip TSWAC, as painful as it will be for me. On the 8th, you all should know that at 8 o'clock in the morning, we have a District 5 spring meeting. That spring meeting, I believe, is actually held in Mille Lacs County this year, although it is gonna be held via video conference. So I was actually thinking, could we have that video conference here in this facility?
I'm sure we could, and I clearly realize I should have been listening to what you were saying, and I wasn't.
No, it's not a problem. The District 5 meeting,
Oh, yes,
The
yep,
district
WebExing into that, absolutely.
I'm just wondering if it would be just the right thing to do to have the board normally attends that meeting. And we certainly can do it from our house. That's not what I'm trying to say,
We could
but
do that in the IT training room, or we could do it in the ITV room over, for social services, so we'll look at what.
just thinking that
we
would
set up.
be,
Yep,
just as
absolutely.
an example.
It's the 8th.
That's the 8th of June. That's also the date that our parking lot's gonna start to get constructed. On the 9th at 12 o'clock, I have scheduled a Toward Zero Death meeting with Public Health. I'm thinking that's also probably video conference, but I can't remember. On Wednesday, the 10th, at 8:30 in the morning, there's a department head meeting. At 11 o'clock that same morning, I have a Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board Executive Committee meeting at 11, and at 1 o'clock, I have a full board meeting with the Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board. That's in St. Cloud. On the 11th, I've got scheduled at 6 p.m. a Trails meeting. Location is unknown, but I'm thinking it's actually scheduled for the main gate. Whether it's going to be there or not, I don't know. On the 12th, at 10 o'clock in the morning, there's a Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board, a RAC meeting, and that's scheduled to be at the Alexandria Fire Hall. Mr. Chair, I believe that's all I have.
Commissioner Winter?
That's all mine covered.
All right, we got 2. The 3rd, 5 o'clock PM, Public Health. There might be WebEx. They don't know yet for sure. Or some type of technological method. 8th, June 8th, Yellow Ribbon, 5:30. They don't let me know until the day of how they're doing it, so it's normally at Cabin Fever,
Which is closed.
which is closed, so,
Guessing it's
I
somewhere
really-
else, that's just
yeah.
helping you out there.
sorry. That's all I got. Anything else, gentlemen?
Mr. Chair, I'll move to adjourn.
Motion made by Commissioner Blaine,
Second.
second by Commissioner Wilson to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.